Hi, in this course, I'm going to teach you everything I know about communication and all these small little things that I picked up teaching over 6,000 hours of communication training to my clients. My name is Rami. I'm a psychologist and I specialize in communication. This is my favorite topic ever. And I want to start things off with a lot of people think communication is some cool thing to say or some kind of body movement. A while back, this was really popular. All of these things are valuable, but to me, they're not the most important thing. The foundation of communication to me is your perspective on it, the mindset that is behind the words that you speak. I think the first and the most important mindset is that it is possible to have a great conversation with anyone, because a big trap that a lot of people fall into is to believe that, oh, there is this compatibility layer that, oh, I need to find my people, and if you're not my people, then we're not compatible and it's impossible for us to have a great conversation, which I think is nonsense. I've had conversations with people that are extremely different than me, but we were able to find common ground. And the thing that allowed me to do that is actually the mindset that it's my job to find that gold, that connection, that spark between me and the other person. Because at the end of the day, we're all human. We all have emotions in common. We all have things that we love and hate, things that we fear, things that we aspire to, failures that we've gone through in the past. All of those things can be used and utilized as a connection point. So that's the most important thing. That kind of gets you through the door. Without this mindset, you will have another step before it where it tells you, oh, should I talk to this person, or should I go deeper with this person, or they're not my type, and da-da. And your brain will start to hide insecurities and fears behind that excuse, because it's a really goddamn good excuse. Don't get me wrong. So that's the first thing. The second thing is something that is called paradigms. Now, I'll need to take a moment here to explain what paradigms even are. Paradigms to me are, let's say, a city like New York is a physical location that you go and explore, but it's so vast, it's so massive that you are unable to explore it without a map. A map in this example is a paradigm. It is a very simplified version of the real thing, because the real thing is too vast and too complex for our brains to just remember. So we just simplify it, put it on a piece of paper, and we just navigate through it. And paradigms are things that are used by the brain all the time. The world is very complex. Things happen all the time that we have no idea about. We don't understand them, especially if you look at it from like an ancient perspective where science and all that was not really a thing. People saw things and they're like, what the hell is this? And they were trying to get this thing into a paradigm that they already had. So in our lives, we do that all the time. We have a set of paradigms for different things. What is a friendship? What is a good conversation? How can we do this? How can we do that? So in our minds, we have a bunch of paradigms for complex things that allow us to navigate life without overwhelming our brain, our processing unit. So with communication, I think it's exactly the same. People have paradigms that allow them to navigate this thing. And one really dangerous paradigm that people fall into is the performance paradigm when they're in a conversation. So in a performance, if you were to imagine it a little bit, you're on stage, there's a group of people, and they're watching you, they're judging your performance, they are making decisions about you and your abilities and who you are, and they're observing you, and you have to perform. And this is one of the things that I noticed with a lot of my clients, is that they are permanently stuck in this performance paradigm when they are actually in a conversation. And they go in with this feeling that they have to perform, they have to impress, they need to sound cool, they need to do cool things to make the other person like them, or present their cool ideas or cool hobbies or whatever. But the goal of it is to impress. And the problem with that is, if your goal is to impress, then you fear judgment. And when you are afraid of judgment, then you start to hide things that you're not proud of, which are most things about humans, right? Like, there are so many things about me that I'm like, I would rather not show this to people. I'm not really proud of that. And what ends up happening is you hide things, you pretend, you kind of bend the truth, and people pick up that vibe. They notice it. And it creates this weird tension because you know what you're hiding, they don't. And they're like, what's going on? It starts to have like this creepy element to it. So the other negative thing about this paradigm is that you are never relaxed. Because when you're talking to someone, you're always thinking, oh, what are they thinking about? Do they think I'm weird? Do they think I'm not really cool? What's going on? So you're always trying to predict what the other person is thinking about you. That's not a very nice emotional state to be in. And this leads me smoothly to a slight tangent about emotion, and then we'll get back to paradigms, is that emotions are infectious. So when I'm in a conversation and I have this stress, I'm hiding things, I'm trying to predict what the other person is thinking, then the other person will pick up on that energy and they will mirror it. Right? We've all had those situations when we're talking to someone and they're like incredibly stressed. That stress kind of comes to us as well, and we become a little bit stressed, we become uncomfortable. So the main issue with this paradigm is that it causes this disruption in communication. It makes it not worth having, to be honest. The juice is not worth the squeeze. And to me, fixing that honestly solves a lot of the problems. So let's look at another paradigm. A paradigm, in my view, that is the ideal paradigm. And actually, in my conversations, I try to have that as much as possible, which is the connection paradigm, friendship. So with the performance one, we're separated, right? I'm on stage and the crowd is sitting and they're watching me. There's this distance. In a gathering, that distance goes away, so we are closer. In performance, my actions are being judged. In gathering, I am too consumed in the social experience that judgment becomes irrelevant. That I'm just with the people, I'm present, and we're looking at the world together. So think of it like that. We're sitting in opposite direction, and I'm looking at you and you're looking at me. That's performance. But when we're sitting side by side and I'm showing you the world, we're talking about the environment, the trees, the sky, the waterfall, whatever, we are collaborative. We are gathering. And one final and super important contrast is that in performance, the conclusion is definitive. So when I'm performing, my performance is either good or bad. And if it's bad, oh my God, the audience doesn't like me, everything's terrible, I'm done, I'm doomed. If it's good, oh, thank God it's good. Whew. Hopefully next time it will be as good. So it's always tense. In a collaborative environment, the conclusion is endless. It's just more depth, more joy, more connection. So when you look at those two paradigms together, you notice a very different vibe emanating from each one of them. The performance one is tense, it's fearful, it's cautious, and it's stressed. It's not pleasant. The collaborative one is calm, is joyful, is curious about the world, is excited, is happy. And you see, I don't want you to just go, oh, I need to be curious and excited and happy. It doesn't work. Seeing the situation as a performance will inevitably cause you to feel the things that you feel, the nervousness, the stress, and so on. It's normal. If I am performing on stage, that will happen. And actually, I remember a while back, I did perform on stage. I was responsible for presenting like a talent show at my university, and I was presenting in front of like 300 people. It was stressful. It was really, really bad. And in my mind, I knew I had to change the paradigm. And changing the paradigm is not mental. A lot of the times that's the solution that people give, like, oh, don't be stressed, oh, just relax, oh, this and that. It doesn't work like that. What you need to do is you need to act in a way that enforces that paradigm. So what I did is I went up on stage and I started talking to the crowd. So instead of me performing and them watching me, I started interacting with them. And I started bringing them along. I started like adding them to my side to make the whole thing a better experience. We're collaborating. So I remember, because they were like international students, I was telling them like, oh, where are the Turks at? And the Turks start screaming. And I'm like, oh, I see a bunch of Somalis here. What are you at? Where are you at? And they start screaming. I'm like, oh my God, these guys are louder. And the Turks like erupted. And another group of people started screaming. And I'm like, where are you guys from? And they shouted. And I'm like, oh my God. And it just became like a competition of who can shout the loudest. And I was just like coordinating it. It was a blast. And just literally after I did that, all my stress went away. I felt like the crowd now is on my side and we're just doing this thing together. And this is just a small example to demonstrate that when you want to change the paradigm, you need to act. If you go into a conversation or a presentation or whatever and you feel stressed and nervous, that is usually because of what your perception of the situation is. And then the next course of action is I need to make it collaborative, and then you go do that. You focus all of your energy on making it collaborative. Now, before we talk about how to do that, there's one more mindset that I think is super, super important. And that mindset is related with control. A lot of the times when we are in conversations or in any kind of social event, when we need to communicate, the main thing that destroys our confidence is control. And actually, confidence in general, I want you to kind of remove that word from your vocabulary when talking about communication, because it's not a very helpful word. Words should mean things that allow us to interact with the world in a helpful way. Confidence is not one of those words, sadly, because we all know, oh, I need to be more confident. Everyone understands what that means. We have a picture of what confidence looks like, but it's not a word that gives us direction. It doesn't help us take the next step. We don't know what to do with that. Oh, okay, I need to be more confident. Now what? Thanks. I knew that already, right? So I want you to replace confidence with control, because control gives us a sense of, I have the ability to change the pace of the thing. And actually, this is an example that I really like to give my clients, is that imagine you're driving a car, right? And you're going slightly above the speed limit. But you're on a highway and you're going left, right. You can slow down, speed up, you can stop, do whatever you want. You feel nothing, right? You're just driving. It doesn't even register. But imagine if you're in the same car, on the same road, and then you try to turn, and the car doesn't turn. You try to stop, the car doesn't stop. You panic. Now every single small thing on the road is a death sentence, and your brain starts to manufacture these scenarios in your head where you just hit this thing and it will flip and it will explode and die and like it's terrible. You're absolutely nervous and you're a nerve wreck basically. And to me, that's what lack of control does. And if those symptoms sound like confidence symptoms, you're absolutely right. Lacking confidence has that. That's why I told you we need to swap those words. Now, quickly to summarize this mindset section, we have 3 main parts. The first one is the mindset that you can talk to anyone and have a great conversation. Doesn't matter who they are, what is their position, what they do in life. If it's one person or a group, does not matter. If they're human, you can talk to them and you can have a great conversation and you can have an amazing time. That's the first mindset. The second one is about paradigm. We want to shift our mindset from one of performance in front of a crowd to one of collaboration and a gathering. We're on the same team. The third one is control. Having control in conversations makes us feel safe. It gives us confidence. It allows us to play. It gives us that space, that room to have fun. It's super, super important. Now, I want to talk about technical stuff. How do we achieve those things? Mindset alone is useless. It's like having a map without going anywhere. It does nothing. So now that we have this mindset, the way to bring it from the realm of the abstract and the mind and actually have it be present in our lives and in our conversations requires a couple of things to be understood. The first one is the layers of conversation. And what I mean by layers, it's 3 distinct places where conversations usually land. And understanding where we are in the conversation gives us a lot of really important data to understand what to do next. So everything that I will tell you after I explain those layers, I want you to kind of think about the layers while we're talking about the other stuff. So the first layer, it's the widest one, the most surface layered one, is about the outside world. You and me, we're sitting, we're hanging out, we're talking about sports. This team did this, this player did that. We're talking about the news. That country's fucked up, that country did this, blah, blah, blah. We're talking about other people. We're talking about the freaking weather. We're talking about science, whatever it is. We're talking about a subject outside of either of us. This is the safest. Like, these are the types of conversations you would have with a stranger because they're safe. And I'm not saying that this layer is good or bad. It's a layer that exists and it's part of the normal conversational progression. Usually, if you find yourself always and exclusively in that layer, then that tells me there's a problem. That means you're unable to go deeper and deeper, which we will talk about in a bit on how to do that. So that's the first layer. The second layer is when we're talking about ourselves, our lives, what we do, what we think, my hobbies, my opinions about the world, my experiences, me and you, right? So this is a lot better. This is a lot more personal. This is deeper. And this is a little bit more vulnerable, right? Like if I tell you, oh, I do yoga, and you're like, oh, you do yoga, oh, do you believe in chakras, blah, blah, blah. Then it becomes kind of a little bit more, I'm more open to judgment. But a lot of the times, vulnerability is the key to connection. But the third layer, is the deepest one, the most vulnerable layer, is that what do those opinions, experiences, life choices say about me? Who am I as a person? So when I say, oh, I do yoga, but what that says about me is I believe that the body should be taken care of and the body and the mind take care of each other. If I take care of my body and my mind, I will live a happy and peaceful life. And that to me is the most important thing. For example, So that talking about that tells the other person who Rami is and what kind of a person I am. This is the most vulnerable. It's very risky. A lot of conflict usually happens here, right? And the funny kind of yin-yang thing about it is that this is where the deepest connection lies. Because if someone tells you that their most valuable thing in life is to find peace, tranquility, and that is what you believe, that's what you find valuable, then that is just like, that like moment when those two things click, it's beautiful, it's magical. And sadly, most people don't get there. They stay really, really shallow, and sometimes they share their opinions. They never go to that very vulnerable place. So, those are the 3 layers of conversation. Now, our goal, generally speaking, when we're talking to people, especially when it's one-on-one, I will talk about group scenarios a little bit later, but with one-on-one, it's usually preferred to start at surface and progressively go deeper. Now, a lot of the times, the fear that we have is that the other person is not interested, right? I've done it multiple times in my life where I share something about my life and then I ask the other person, what do they think? And they give me a very kind of muddy, vague answer of like, yeah, some people believe this, some people believe that, but it's a complicated topic, so we don't know. But yeah, have you heard about this thing, right? And then they talk about the outside world. That can feel like it's a form of rejection, that I tried to deepen the connection, but the other person said no. And that is such a painful experience for a lot of people. And I believe that's why they avoid it like the plague. Now, I really think the best way to do it is to take the initiative. And this is one thing that I believe is super important to kind of keep in mind. Maybe it's a little bit of a mindset, but you need to lead. If you want to have good conversations, you need to lead the conversation to a place that you want it to be, to a more fulfilling place. That kind of relates to the control idea that I mentioned earlier. So, surface layer, we're talking about the weather, we're talking about the news. I will share something. I'll say, I really think that a lot of people, let's say we're talking about fitness, right? Like, there's this gym that opened recently and it's really interesting. I'm thinking about going to it or whatever. I was like, I really think that gyms are a bit overrated. Like they operate on the assumption that you will not go, and they will make it as difficult as possible for you to not go. Because if everyone who buys a subscription goes, the gym will literally collapse. So they benefit when you don't go. And I don't want to be in a business relationship with an institution that wins when I lose. I want to be in relationships with institutions or businesses where they win when I win. What do you think about that? And then I look at the person, I'm like, what kind of response will they have? If they're like, I don't know, a lot of businesses do this, it's kind of a weird thing, but I'm also thinking about maybe taking some swimming lessons. That tells me that the other person is not comfortable going deeper yet, right? Different people have different personalities, they have different comfort levels, maybe they need more time or whatever. So what you need to do is you need to detect that, you need to be aware of that, and you need to take a step back. Like, okay, they're not ready yet. So the way I like to think about it is 2 steps forward, 1 step back. You take a step back, you're like, yeah, swimming's really cool, blah, blah, blah. You talk about something surface layered. And most of the time, when you go in and then you notice that the other person is not comfortable and you go back a level, that will give the person so much comfort because you've demonstrated empathy. You've noticed that they are not comfortable and you kind of slowed down a little bit and you gave them space to relax. Again, this is something that you don't have to be like autistic about it and just be like, okay, I'm gonna give you some space. Take your time to come to the next level. But it's emotional. People feel it. And that emotion, as I said, it's infectious. so people will relax. And after that, they will be way more willing to go into the next level. And then from that level, you do it again, and you're now talking about something really, really deep. And I remember actually one time, I was invited to a dinner, and the conversation was so stale. Everyone was talking about the outside world. And then there was no more outside world to talk about. And they were just sitting there like, they didn't know what to talk about. So I came in and I shared an opinion. And it was a very vulnerable opinion. I'm like, this is what I believe. And one guy was like, oh, really? I don't really think so. I really believe that things should be in a different way. And then literally like 15 minutes later, we were talking about consciousness and what we believe in and all that. And the only reason I remember this is because actually my friend who invited me told me about this afterwards. He's like, dude, before you came, we were talking about nothing. We were super bored. The conversation was dead. You came 10 minutes later, we're talking about consciousness. We're having a blast. And that's why it kind of stuck with me. Because when you know what to look for, when you know what you're doing, any social environment becomes better with you in it. And this is what we want, right? This is the goal. So we talked about the levels. Now I want to talk about something a bit more technical in the sense of like exactly what to do. Because a lot of the times people think that conversations should be interesting, the topic should be nice, or the content of the conversation itself is what matters. Couldn't be further from the truth. I absolutely disagree with that idea. I've had conversations about really, really stupid things. But the thing that made those conversations nice and enjoyable was that everyone who was involved in the conversation contributed. So think of it like this. If you have a father and a son, and they go to the beach, and the father's like, all right, I'm going to build you a sandcastle. And the father just goes and builds an amazing sandcastle. The kid's going, oh, that looks cool. But it's not that interesting to the kid. But if the father's like, hey, let's build a sandcastle together, it probably will be much worse than the other one. But the child will be so invested. They'll be like, oh my God, look at this castle that I made with my dad. It was awesome. It was amazing. Blah, blah, blah. It will be like a core memory simply because the child contributed. And this thing does not leave us. It sticks with us. We want to leave a footprint on something. So if something is good on its own, it's less valuable than a thing that is not as good, but we made it or we helped make it. And that, to me, is the secret to good conversations, both parties. So when I go into a conversation, my goal is not to find a good topic and do this and that. My goal is to create an environment where everyone can contribute. So let's say I'm having a conversation one-on-one. When I'm talking to a person, in my mind there's like a scale. How balanced is this conversation? And I've done it so many times that now it's kind of second nature. I don't think about it. I just feel it. And I think most people do. But if you don't, just keep in mind that the conversation, generally speaking, needs to be 50-50. You need to be speaking 50% of the time. They need to be speaking 50% of the time. And before I go more, I want you again to pay attention to the layers and the mindsets that I mentioned in how they get implemented in this tactic, so that when I'm controlling the conversation now, I'm making sure it's 50-50. That gives me control, which makes me feel more confident. That changes the paradigm because it's not a performance. I'm not just standing and I'm performing, or I'm letting the other person talk. I'm being passive. I'm taking control of the conversation and I'm making it balanced. That is where you force those mindsets to change, which directly changes how you feel in a conversation. So when it comes to balance, there are two states that are bad. like this, and like this, obviously. So when I'm speaking more than the other person, what I need to do is I need to ask questions. And we'll talk about how to do that. And when I am speaking less than the other person, I need to interrupt. And I know this is a bit of a sensitive thing. People don't like to interrupt, but you need to interrupt. And we'll talk about how to do that. But when it comes to the balance, cadence, I mean, this is balance, but this is also balance, right? Conversations are messy, things happen, people start stories, whatever. It doesn't mean like you should just interrupt them mid-story and talk because you want to keep the balance. This is also balance. So what about groups, right? So if I'm talking with 5 people, and this is actually the thing that I did with my friend when I was invited to a dinner. We were, I think, like 6 or 7 people. And I sat down and I made sure to split it equally. So when that guy didn't agree with what I was saying, he talked a little bit, and then I noticed that one person was making like some facial expressions, and I'm like, hey, I see that you don't really agree with that. What do you think? And then he started speaking. And then I spoke a little bit, and then another person, I started bringing people into the conversation to make them feel like this is not me and the other person's conversation and they're just watching. No, this is our conversation. And again, you need to take the lead, you need to take control, and it's your job, literally, to do so. So, those are the 2 skills that until now we know we need to get good at. First one is asking questions. Second one is interrupting. So I'm going to start with asking questions because this is more or less straightforward, I would say. Questions, when you are asking questions with this mindset in mind that you want to balance the conversation, you would not simply ask a question. You would investigate. And this is a nice reframe that I have between asking questions and investigating, is that when you investigate something, you want to get to the bottom of it. The digging aspect is super important because it shows the other person that you care, that you're interested, because you're trying to investigate. You want to know. So I would say that is that too about questions. If there is anything you want to know more about questions, please just write in the comments. I will answer. So the other one is interrupting. And this is where it's a little bit juicy because interruption should have the same energy, care, interest, desire for connection. So when I'm talking to someone and I feel like the conversation is not really balanced, I will interrupt them, but not in the sense like, oh, you're taking my turn, it's mine now, get fucked. That's really bad, that creates like terrible energy and it ruins the mood. The way I think about it is like a person on stage and they're holding a microphone and they're talking, they're speaking. I come to them and I take the microphone away from them and I speak. Now, where this becomes really rude and bad is when I take the microphone, I sit down and I just start yapping about my opinions and my thoughts and stories and blah, blah, blah. And I take a really long time with it and I don't give it back, then it's really, really bad. But if I take the microphone and I build on what the person was talking about, and then I ask them about their thoughts on this slightly different perspective, and then I give it back to them, now it's actually interesting. Like, think of it like this. If you're talking to someone and you're sharing a story or whatever, and they interrupt you because they want to know more, because there's something that they didn't understand, you will feel good. You'll feel like, oh, this person is so like, involved. They're with me. They want to know more. Like, it feels more of a dance than, oh, let me throw this to you. Okay, now your turn, throw it back. No, it's more like back and forth, So when it comes to like a very technical way of doing it, the way I teach my clients is you need to first interrupt, like to stop their flow by saying any kind of word, honestly, like, actually, wait a minute. Oh, 1 second. wait, hold on. Anything. You can literally say anything, because the way you interrupt the flow is not really important. There's no kind of interpretation to it, because the interpretation comes after what you do. After you interrupt them, what is the next thing you do? If you interrupt them and then you talk about your things and you open a different topic, then it's extremely rude and it's very offensive. So we interrupt, we cut their flow. Then what we do is we tell them something that they have just said. We kind of repeat it back at them. So, you mentioned that this is this blah blah blah, or your idea about this and that it's like that. I don't know, it doesn't sit really well with me, whatever. But when we tell them something that they have said, it communicates that we are listening. We're with you. And the thing that we're talking about is related to the thing that you were saying. So it feels instantly more like, oh, okay, there's something that didn't sit well with them, they didn't understand, whatever, and they're just going through it. So all of that tension of, oh, this person is rude, instantly evaporates. It works. It's amazing. So after that, what is important is you need to share your opinion about the thing that you just replayed. So now you shared something about your beliefs, your thoughts, your whatever. And then at the end, and this is the give back the mic moment, you ask a question. You're like, what do you think about that? Do you agree? Or has that been your experience? Do you find gyms social? Or have you seen people do that at the gym? And you give it back to them. This does two things. It rebalances the conversation, and it shows the other person that you're interested, that you are active, that you are like with them. You're not just letting them speak and you're watching them, because that puts them in the performative paradigm. You're actually dancing with them. You're collaborating on this understanding, shared understanding. So that is interrupting. So in a conversation, your job is to be doing one of the either. You either ask questions and then listen, interrupt, share, rebalance the conversation, ask a question, and then listen. And then you're just doing this. And that's the dance. That's the conversation. So the thing that I want to close with is that there are a million small things that you can do that can improve your conversations. But in my belief, what we just talked about is the most foundational and important part of communication. If you get those foundations right, then I guarantee you will have a great conversation with anyone, anytime, anywhere. I hope this was helpful. This is something, I don't know, I just crossed my mind, like, I'm gonna make a course, put it all on YouTube, see what comes out of it. So if you found it useful, if you found it enjoyable, please let me know in the comments. Of course, I read all of them because there's like none of them. So I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you soon. Take care.